morning, everybody, and welcome to The Art as Well. This is episode 53, and I'm delighted to have with us our special guest this morning, Tim Booth. Now, Tim is originally from Kildare. I think he moved around a few places before eventually ending up in a beautiful area called Ballinskelligs in County Kerry, overlooking Ballinskelligs Bay, which we will see in a second when we do the studio tour. So let's go straight down to Tim and say good morning. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Beautiful morning here.
So I believe. I think it's beautiful everywhere. So how long are you living there?
21 years, 22 years, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And where before that?
Before that, I was living in Dublin. And before that, I was living in Kildare.
Yes.
Before that, I was living in London.
Where?
London.
Oh, London. All right. It's London, England.
London, England, yeah.
Yes.
Before that, I could go on.
You could go on. Okay. Well, look, let's start with your artistic career. When did that start with you?
My mother was a really good artist.
Mm-hmm.
She was very, very reticent about showing work, and didn't believe that she was of really any worth, but she was great. She used to draw for the Koala Press for the Yates family, and always was a very good watercolorist and did a little bit of oil. So she always encouraged me to draw. And when I was about 5 or 6, she started subscribing to the Eagle comic at the time because it was very well drawn, she thought, and it would be good for my drawing.
Yes.
So that style of drawing, the comic style of drawing, influenced me hugely. And then I went to university and studied geology and natural sciences for a year, but it didn't take because I had to do things like mechanics, and I couldn't understand that at all.
Right.
But I was involved there in the Art Society and Players and Film Society and the Music Societies, and did a lot of poster work and did a lot of work for the magazines, laid them out and so on.
Yes.
So it was a kind of natural step to start painting, because after university, before I finished university, I managed to acquire a job in arts advertising.
Oh, right.
Yes. What was then called a junior visualizer.
A junior visualizer, yeah. Yes.
So and I had a folder of work to show.
Yeah.
But after a little while, I got bored in there. So I put a picture into the Living Art, and to my amazement, they accepted it. And that kind of opened a lot of doors. I was now kind of a cutting edge young artist.
Yes, yes. And tell us about that, because that was quite a significant moment, wasn't it, when you were accepted to that?
It was significant. And it was a painting which I later, it was an image of Bob Dylan with a big box construction coming out of where his heart was.
Yes.
And I think another one over his loins, which had kind of abstract images on them. And I later destroyed it.
I see. Why was that now, Tim? You better explain.
It just annoyed me. It wasn't. I started to see good work and realized, Yeah.
And listen, where did the music then come into this?
Well, I'd always, again through my mother, she wanted me to learn piano, but piano wasn't sexy enough when I was 13. So she got me a guitar in McCullough Pigot's for £6. It must have been quite a good guitar, because that was quite a lot to pay at the time.
Yes.
And there were a couple of people in school, including Brian Trench, who could play guitar a bit, and they taught me more or less all I know.
Yes.
And I just loved it, and still do.
Yeah. So you hung out with a crowd who would include the likes of Tim Goulding and.
I never hung out with Tim Goulding. I tried to ignore him as much.
Well, he told me you did.
He's lying. You can't believe a word he says.
I know that, but the point is, you actually did end up being in a band with him, so you can't deny that. It's on record.
We hung out together with Tim, Ivan, Paul also.
Yes, who's here?
Yeah.
Watching, yeah.
Hello, Ivan. And we formed, strangely, Ivan and myself and another guitar player called Humphrey. Yeah. And Brian Trench was in the Art of Strangeness as well. and whipped us into shape. And through a series of coincidences, we managed to get a record contract, by which time Goulding was with us as well, playing keyboards and adding a very formal tone to all the music.
Yes,
just as well.
And both you and he, though, still had this leaning towards art, and which over.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I really liked painting. I still do, but I also really love music.
Yes.
And it's really hard to decide which one to follow. So you'd follow one for maybe 6 months and then go off, play some music for a few months and then come back and do a bit more painting.
Well, I was going to ask you that was somebody who's kind of multi-talented like you, where you've got film, animation, illustration, writing, music. How do you actually combine the two? Or do you go off and sort of tangents, music binges, and then go to art binges?
I find if I get kind of blocked on one of them, I go off and try another one for a while.
Yeah. And
I haven't been doing very much painting in the last year or so, because I acquired a thing, an iPad, I have to get this right, an iPad Pro.
Yes.
Which you draw on. You draw straight onto the computer surface with a thing like this, which is an Apple Pencil.
Yes.
And it's a really versatile tool for anyone who's doing anything that's politically commenting on what's going down. You can draw direct onto it. You can pull up all the references you want from the net and put them on the screen and draw them. And when the drawing is finished, you can send it off to the printer. It's printer ready.
Yes.
So it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
And you can draw it, like some of the drawings on it, you wouldn't know they were done on the computer. There is nothing to signify that. I'll show some later. That's
right. Yeah, we have an example of that, which is amazing. And I think, the whole idea of that sort of digital drawing used to be sort of poo-pooed, but I think now when the likes of Hockney is embracing it big time, yeah. It's become quite the thing to be involved in.
It's the most fantastic tool. Like it's like having a whole other set of oils or watercolors or pencils or charcoal and a few other things just in your tablet, and it's just extraordinary. And
it's very clean and ecologically sound.
Well, I don't know. There's probably 2,000 young boys being whipped down a mine somewhere to make the bits that you need for the art. But it's probably sounder than some of the ways we work.
Sure, yeah. Listen, before I forget, I'd love to have a studio tour, of your place there, because you're in a beautiful part of the world. Now, I also wanted to see outside, so as a result, you very kindly did a video for us. I'm going to play that now. It's about 5.5 minutes, but it does show exactly where you are, and then we go back to where you are sitting there.
Okay, so here's the sky this evening. Pan down, we find Ballinskelligs Bay, which is the view that I have from my studio, and I normally keep my back to it if I'm working. So we'll just go around through the garden, and we'll come in to the studio entrance, which is just here. In we go. There's lots of flower plants because it's a multi-purpose room. And this is a painting I've been working on called Flag over the last, I finished it a couple of years back, but then I thought it was too red. So I'm now doing a bit of Celtic noodling to it to see how it'll turn out. And it's looking good. And over here is portraits of my children, which I like to have on the wall, which I did years ago, obviously, when they were that age. A beloved guitar that I like to play a lot. And then another picture called The Salmon of Knowledge. If you look closely, you'll see there are kind of fishy themes in it. And then down here is a desk that we use, my partner Doris and myself, for our general work. We keep our computers here. My iMac lives here. My iPad normally lives on the stand here, and that's where I do a lot of Procreate work. Then here's another picture called Be What You Can Be, which I I painted a few years back, but I kind of like it. It's a joke. Here is another more difficult picture. I'll just pull out, let you see it, which was a response to 9/11. It's quite a big picture, quite long. And it took a while to grow. And it starts off with, if you like, the Muslim world and some of their problems. And then it's passive as it goes across a kind of stillness. And in Arabic, I think that says, have a nice day. And we move on and we find a rock pool in Ballinskelligs in Clonakilty, where I first heard about the towers. And if you look in the water, you can see, first of all, the trail of the plane coming from here, coming along. And we see the plane reflected as it flies into the towers. And over here, then, we have the Georgie boy and all his surrounding stuff, which would include our favorite cartoon character and our very favorite whatever, Halliburton. And of course, the bubbly, frothy drink. That's enough of that. Down here, a couple of guitars that I like to play. Over here, guitar amp. Here, on wheels, that can be moved about. There's a lot of things in the studio are. Brushes, various things that I like to use, like liquin there. Some linseed, terps, all these important things that you're painting in oils. And here, ironically, some acrylics, which I occasionally still use. And down here is a nice big easel, my painting jacket, paints, and kind of more paints. And then in case I want to do watercolors or other things, I keep them separate in here. Old drawings and stuff stored in this big cupboard here. Back here we have the view out again, and the tomato plants, and a very nice bouncy seat, which keeps you limber while you're painting. Sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit. I painted the studio floor recently with a paint called chalky finish floor paint, which is very good. And I've been using a little of it on this oil painting to put in these swirls here, just with putting them in with a very fine brush. And it actually works perfectly. It loves the oil paint, and I don't think it's going to crack at you. We'll see. Walking in the door is Delmar the Greyhound, who comes in and out at his own pace, but he likes to star and things. And that's about it. So now I'll give you a general view and hand you back to Alan.
So you're in an idyllic position there.
Yeah, it's an idyllic place when the weather's good. In the winter, you can imagine the storms sweep through. And in 2014, we lost power here for, I think, 4 days, and we're on a well. So that was not great.
No.
Winter is tough.
Yeah.
But I love the winter because you're here just with local people and tough blow-ins like ourselves who tough it out. And you can get on the beaches. At the moment, it's completely impossible to get on the beaches. The cars are parked, Dublin Reg cars are parked all the way up and down the road.
Yes.
You don't really want to go there.
A bit like British. I was there on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Yeah. Now, tell me, because I was down in Kilreelig once, the view out from the Kilreelig village almost seems to be exactly the same as you.
It is, yeah. Kilreelig is a little further. As you were looking at the opening of that, Kilreelig would be to the right-hand side of Frame.
Ah, right, okay.
It's a little further along. That's Bolus Head there, and it's on the road up to Bolus.
Ah,
so
right.
Further up there.
Okay, so you're probably neighbours of Noel, are you, Campbell Shaw?
Yeah, I can see Noel's house from here.
Can you? All right, very good. Yeah, beautiful. That's lovely. And tell me, the whole filming area, how did that come about?
I had some friends. We all used to meet in Toner's pub, and there was a huge amount of it was like our clubhouse in a funny way. And the old Mr. Toner and Charlie the barman were really, really kind to us, and used to give us Christmas presents of like a crazy stout, a couple of bottles of whiskey, and a quarter ton of coal to deliver down to where Tim Goulding's first wife Annie Orphan lived.
Yes.
Which was a house on Mount Street known as the Orphanage, an old Georgian house, which she rented a couple of rooms in.
Yes.
And so we'd all hang out in Toners, and this was various people who were writers and artists. A lot of art students would go in there. Robert Balla would be in and out, Mick Farrell, like lots and lots of kind of influential people who later became more influential, including a few young people who were working in the film industry, and I got to know them.
Yes.
And one day, one of them asked me if I would work a little bit on a film that was being made of Lee Dunn's book, Goodbye to the Hill. They didn't call it that then, but what they needed was an art director to source props and stuff. It was a very low budget shoot. It was produced by Roger Corman, who was a name for that kind of work. And I worked on that for, I think, on and off for about a month while it was shooting. It was directed by a French cameraman called Daniel de Cumbre. And he was a really interesting man. And that just gave me a great grow for the whole film industry as it was. So subsequently, I worked on another film for Roger Corman called Richthofen and Brown. And on that, I met Jimmy Murakami, who was, I think he was directing the aerial sequences, because that was the First World War film.
Yes.
And later on, after I had come back, I went to London and I went to Scotland. When I came back eventually to help my father with the farm, because I grew up on a farm, after he died, I didn't want to continue farming. So I had to get a job. So I went into advertising for a little while again. And then left that and worked with Jimmy for a number of years, shooting commercials mostly, but doing a few documentaries and bits and pieces. And he allowed me to use his facilities to make this animation, The Prisoner, which I got funded by the Film Board and the Arts Council to make.
And we'll see a clip of that.
That was invited to Berlin to represent Ireland.
Yeah, we'll see a clip of that. Wasn't Jimmy Murakami famously involved in the animation The Snowman?
Yes, he was. Yeah. Jimmy died a few years back, and Shea Mary Doyle made an excellent film about him. And Shea Mary is being mentioned because he also did the sound edit on The Prisoner, which was the first Irish film ever to have a stereo soundtrack, which cost an arm and a leg. We had to do that in London.
Yes.
But I could speak the language, so it was all right.
I see. Did that take up a fair portion of your career, the whole area of film? And
it kind of ran parallel to everything else I was doing. I ran a small production company for a number of years, not very successfully, because it's very difficult to be. I also was the live action director, and I made a few documentaries. It's very difficult to be both producer and director at the same time, because your director's hat tells you need another shot, and your producer's hat tells you haven't got the budget.
So that's the essential difference.
The director's hat in that case would win. When you have an external producer, they pull the plug if you try and do anything that you shouldn't be doing.
Interesting.
They can. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay, listen. Let's look at some of your work. Because it'll encompass all those areas of the cartoon aspect and the film, as well as your painting. So look, I'm going to let you run through those, and you just tell me to move on as and when.
Okay. This is a drawing I made when I think I was 17 in my first year in Trinity, and I was a fish out of water. I didn't know what was going down. And I made this early one morning in the digs I lived in Whitworth Road, which I hated. And you can see that I have chemistry and mechanic lecture angst. But I think it's quite a nice drawing for a 17-year-old. It was done with a magic marker.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Lovely.
This is probably doesn't need any explanation, but it is done on Procreate on that computer.
Oh, is it? Yes.
That's a Procreate drawing.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is you can take apart it if you want. You can use that head again without having to redraw it, as a for instance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very good. Yeah.
That also is a Procreate drawing. It's just another aspect of what it does. And that was an illustration for a book called Irish Tales that a friend of mine wrote.
And sorry, you do that in Procreate, so it's not.
It's all in Procreate. There's no paper involved in that.
Paper.
At all.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an old painting that I think I made when I lived in Sandymount, and it's called Star of Bethlehem. And it's all done in house paint, and the red and the grey, I think, are acrylic, liquid acrylic that came from America.
All right. What size would it be?
That is about, it's about half a metre, a bit more wide.
Okay, okay.
This is, it's hard to see this one, but this is from that era, and it's a picture I'd forgotten all about until Trinity rang me up and said they had it, and it was in their collection. And was it mine? And would it be okay if they did a little bit of restoring? And did I want to come and see it when they hung it? So it hangs at intervals in the library in Trinity. That's called Battleship.
Very good.
This was I thought it must be easier to do hard edge painting than it is to do more naturalistic things. So I had a little go at hard edge for a while, and this was shown in the living art. It's quite big, that. I think it's about a bit more than a metre square, I'd say. Yes. And it's red and blue acrylic paint, which it doesn't really do it there, but when it's on a wall and you're standing near it, it vibrates. The colors vibrate against each other.
Do they?
So
yeah.
It's like a television set that's on with no image. And Carol's bought it from me in the living art. It now hangs in the Institute of Technology in Dundalk. And it's called Breaking Up is Hard to Do.
Lovely. Lovely.
Yeah. That's a more recent picture. And I went back to what I prefer. And that is actually the small skellig. I went out one day on a boat to go to land on the big skellig, and came back with a small one. I had my camera and I just took some images of this sea cave. It's called Through. And on the left-hand side where the water meets the rock, there's a very fine line of gold, which you really can't see in that reproduction, but it's like glistening wet water. Yeah. It works very well.
And is that a large picture?
That's about, I think it's, I'd say it's about a metre high. This one was sold in a group show, the first show I would think I ever contributed to in the Brown Thomas Gallery, way back in about, I think, 1969 or so. There was a show of emerging or pre-emergent young Irish artists that was curated by Amanda Douglas, who ran the gallery, because the Maguire family, Eddie Maguire was a son, I think, of the owner, or maybe a nephew of the owner of Brown Thomas, Eddie Maguire, the painter. So they had a great interest in the arts. So they had a gallery there for a number of years, and it was a great place. It gave an awful lot of people a start. That's a self-portrait I did a couple of years back.
And what mediums?
It's in the Big Head School of Portraiture.
All right. And I think I'm in that school as well.
It's oil paint.
Oil, is it? Yes. Yeah. Very good. When did you do that?
About 8 years ago, and it's about, I'd say it's about 3 feet high. That was a drawing I made for Phil Lynott for one of his books of poetry and lyrics. He had a song called Cowboy Song. The hook line was Roll Me Over. And it was about, it had kind of Western themes running through it, so it made sense to put him on the guitar.
Did he hang out with you in toners?
He did, yeah. Sometimes he would very often be in there. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And this is a CD cover, isn't it?
It was a kind of an insert for the CD.
Oh, an insert.
It wasn't the cover. It was when you opened it up, there it was, and that was drawn on paper originally, drawn on watercolor paper with a fine felt tip, and then photographed, and without the photograph that's in the bottom of it, and put into Photoshop and colored up and manipulated in Photoshop.
Yes.
But these days I would do all that on Procreate, as it's easier to do. But it worked pretty good. I'm pleased. It's images from lyrics of Strangely Strange songs.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
And the Ballad of the Wasps is predominantly there. And
Yeah.
My New Shoes Are Pinching is also the other one.
Oh, yes. Lovely. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some of your animation work, some of your film work, and we have two examples of it. The first is Ulysses, and the second is The Prisoner that you were referring to as well. Now, this one in Ulysses was made a good number of years ago, but it's played every single year during Bloomsday, I understand.
It's all around the world, I believe.
All around the world, yeah. Okay. Not necessarily suitable for little eyes. So bear that in mind.
So too are the 24 frames in a second of 35mm film. There were 24 hours in the first Bloomsday, and we, at the Digested Reader, hold to this tradition. Thus, our condensation of the great book of Ulysses will last only some 4.5 minutes, or 6,400 frames of film, which I think you will agree is interesting when one takes into consideration that the date of the original Bloomsday also contained a 6 and a 4. Now, this cannot be mere...
Dear Stanislaus, still having trouble with this damn work. I think I have the opening. Stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead.
Do you see that?
Bearing
Joyce's tower at Sandymount. Look, there's one of them now. Stevie D, a teacher who calls himself a writer. Mind you, the book's not about him at all. No, it's set over on the other side of the city. The north side. Your man Leopold, Mr. Bloom to you or me. He's got a bit of a problem with the ball and chain. He thinks she's getting a leg under your man. Blazes boiling. Kerry, Owen, you here? Come back in here. Now, Bloom needs to keep a body and soul together.
There was something. His 500 wives had the time of their lives. It grew bigger and bigger and bigger. That was a rare bit of horseflesh. Her mouth glued to his in a luscious, voluptuous kiss, while his hands felt the opulent curves inside her dish of bill.
Oh, yeah. Keep body and soul together. When not out on the strand, taking himself in hand, if you catch my drift. And wasn't he right to be worried about his little wife? So quick as a flash. And Poldy, the cute whore, in the company of Stevie D.
Hello, boys.
Finds a cuter whore in Night Town. But let's not forget the original Greek tale on which Mr. Joyce was so foolish as to base his squalid story. What was its title? Ulysses. Question, and how long did this cozy little scene last? Answer, not very. But where was your one? Molly. Upstairs, of course, with the post-coital bliss after her blazes hammered.
Is that you, Polly? Are you going to sleep?
Yes, I said yes. I will, yes. So there you have it. It's a real bollocks of a book. Can't seem to find the ending either. I remain your loving brother, Jim.
But that's all shite on you.
Him and his snot-green attitudes.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. Tim, was that all hand drawn?
Absolutely, every frame.
Well, how many frames are you talking about?
Well, he said in the beginning, I can't remember now, but I've
24, is it?
There's in theory there are 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
But you normally get away with shooting on what's called twos, where you use 2 frames. So it's more like 12 frames. But if you take it as perhaps 10 frames per second. But with The Prisoner, the other film, which was done in a much more traditional animation, more Disney style, first of all, you draw it on paper. Then you ink it onto the cell, and then you paint the cell. So there were at least 9,000 drawings in The Prisoner. So if you, never mind the background, so if you then triple that, that's 27,000 drawings. It's an awful lot of work, and it's very nice when you stop, which is why I don't do it very often these days.
And how long would it have taken you, Tim, to do that?
To do The Prisoner, because it took on and off the bones of a year, because it's 15 minutes long.
Yes.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then you have to edit it and dub it and all of those things as well, which are also time consuming.
Yeah.
And we did that the old-fashioned way.
Yes.
With you know, like putting it onto MagTrack and putting it onto the part of the film where the light runs the sound.
Yes. Yeah. I was just saying to somebody about the credits, we leave the credits out because they're, it'll shorten the clip. And I said, no way, because I have a particular bugbear about a lot of these new films or series, you see, where they flick down through the credits. You can't read them. So I don't know what the point is, but I think it's very unfair because there's so many people involved in an enterprise.
It's very unfair to the people who work not as directors and not as producers, but do a huge amount of legwork that the producer and director can't survive without.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
They do the graft.
Now we're going to move on to The Prisoner.
Yeah.
And I think there mightn't be any harm in you introducing it in some detail, because I think certainly when I saw it first, I found it very difficult to comprehend what was going on. So sorry. and the other thing I have to say is you were saying it's 23 minutes long.
No, it's 16
16 minutes. Well, I edited it down to about 6 minutes with your permission, which was very, very generous of you to do. But anyway, no, give us an intro to it anyway.
Well, The Prisoner, how did that come about? Yeah, I was working with Jim Murakami, and I thought I would like to make a little film which was all my own work, if you like, and that I would put it into festivals and so on and so forth, which I subsequently did. And Jimmy very kindly allowed me to use his rostrum camera. Now, rostrum camera, it was really there were only 2 in the whole of Ireland, I think, at the time. And he had a really good one. And his camera operator, Seamus McInerney, who went on to become quite a well-known film producer in his own right, was a very, very patient and tolerant man. and put up with me blundering around his darkroom while we put all the cells together.
Yes, yeah.
And shot it brilliantly for me. And we shot that on 35mm film and then dubbed it in England into stereo, which was an expensive process. And then I struck prints of it. I struck something like 6 or 10 prints in mono and 4 in stereo. And the distribution company at the time, who better remain nameless, didn't really care very much. So they sent the stereo prints off to places like Sligo to mono cinemas that weren't set up to show a stereo soundtrack. And the mono prints were shown almost without exception in stereo cinemas in Dublin. So the sound was mangled in both cases. So people came away even more baffled by it.
I'm not alone.
It's basically just taking Yeats's Lake Isle Innisfree Free and having another look at it from a kind of a very weird perspective. It got me into trouble with quite a lot of older, mainly female people who said, would you not just have shot beautiful images of water rippling and stuff like that? He really wouldn't have liked that. However, I did invite Anne Yeats to the showing. Anne Yeats is William Butler Yeats's daughter, who was a painter, who I knew a little bit through the living art. We had met. So she was now an old lady, and I invited her to the showing, and she and her companion arrived. And I was kind of nervous about how they would take it. And afterwards, I went up and well, she came up to me and she said, I really enjoyed that. Yeah. And she said, but it was very disturbing to see Daddy tied to a lamppost at the end.
On that note,
she actually got it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very good. On that note, we'll go straight into that film.
and go to Innisfree. And the small cabin built there. Nine bean rows will I have there. And live alone in the Ballinskelligs Glade. And Peace comes, dropping slow. A moon, purple glow. And evening, full of the lynx wings. I will arise and go now. For all is night and day. I hear lake water lapping with no sounds by the shore. While I stand on the roadway. Or the pavement's grey. I hear it in the deep heart.
Hey.
Core.
Fire.
Very good. I hope I didn't make a mess of that editing, but I tried my best to make it reasonably comprehensive.
I know you did, and you're forgiven.
Thanks. I thought my transitions were particularly good, but anyway.
They were lovely, lovely. I'm going to watch those a lot.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
It was the right decision because it's too long otherwise. You know?
Oh, well, I think for something like this, yes.
Yeah, the taste of it is enough. You know,
exactly. But you just missed out on winning quite a big award, didn't you?
Well, it was invited to Berlin, and they put me up for a couple of days actually, and they did a brilliant showing of it. They unlike the Irish distributors, they really cared about the film. And they took me, they said, do you want to go and meet our projections? So I went in and I talked to the woman who was running the projection booth, and she said, look, I can push this a little. If there's any part that you think you'd like to hear a bit more of the track, I'll mark it and we'll push it as we show it. So we went through the film, and there were a couple of points where I said, yeah, can you take that down? Can you put that up? And she did. And it was a very clean print in a wonderful stereo cinema. And it looked and sounded great. I subsequently found out from someone who was involved in the organization that they had considered it for a prize, but that year, for political reasons, China needed to get a prize. So they got the third one, the Bronze Bear, which they were considering me for. So I was knocked back down the list. So that was grand. I didn't really mind that much. I had a great time in Berlin.
Did you? Yes.
Yeah, we had very little money, but I ran into an American producer director called Rusty Fisher and a Canadian journalist. We decided we'd go to Checkpoint Charlie and see what was going on because the wall was still up, and Berlin was a much smaller town than it is now. It was all centered on the Kurfürsten Dam. We looked at Checkpoint Charlie through binoculars, at the east through binoculars, and decided we'd be better to spend a little bit of money because it was going to cost us $40 each or something to go over, and we had to spend all that in the east. Yes. So we pooled our resources and went back to the French cafe where we used to hang out, and got a big table there and sat around and waited for Wim Wenders and various other people to come in. And when they did, they couldn't get a seat. We said, "Come on, we've got a table." Yeah. And we all sat around the table and discussed film. It was great.
Fantastic. Fabulous. Tim, we've got... Sorry, go on. No, go on.
And one other showing, Rusty, the American filmmaker, was late. He hadn't seen it at this stage. And he stepped out of the offices of the Berlin Film Festival, hailed a cab and said, "Take me to the Plaza Cinema," where the film was showing, "and step on it." And the guy took off, and after about 20 yards, slammed on the brakes and pulled up 40 yards down the road because the cinema was literally next door and he hadn't realized. It was one of those mad times.
Yes, yes. Great story. Great stories. Now, we have 4 more images to look at. And the first one goes back to what we were talking about earlier, or what you were talking about with your iPad Pro and Procreate.
Yep.
And it demonstrates very, very clearly what you were talking about there. So let's have a look at that.
Yep.
Okay, you can talk through this, Tim.
Okay, this was a little political thing I did about the Alliance. So working on Procreate, this is taken off the Procreate screen. You can see how I can adjust it, and I can grab images of the politicians I want to put into it just off the internet without having to print them out or search through reference drawers. And that is so handy. And then you just build it up, color it in, and voila. I mean, that's an edited down version. Like, to draw that on Procreate took a number of hours, but even so, it's very fast.
It's fantastic, and the changes you can make at will.
Yeah, which is it's so manipulative. Brilliant.
Yeah, this goes back a long time to Jackie.
Yeah,
which my wife has a whole stack of, by the way.
I lived in Leithen in Scotland for a little while, and I used to drive up to Dundee, where DC Thompson's were based, and they published Jackie, and they also published Beano, I think the Dandy, and 64-page war comics. And they tried me out at various ones. I think I did some tests drawing Desperate Dan, but I couldn't hold his character well enough for them. So they then gave me work to do on Jackie. And if you did something like this, I think you got something like a 5 or 6 quid for a color illustration and a couple of quid for a black and white illustration. But they were very good. They used to send work down to me when I moved to London. And I would put it on the train and would get back up to them. And they always paid on time. They didn't pay a huge amount, but they always paid.
Yes.
So I kind of liked them for that.
Did you do a fair bit of work for them then? Yeah.
I didn't do that much. The only work I have that I've got that survives is this illustration, and I think 2 others I did for the same short story.
Yes.
So these were illustrations for a short story, but they worked kind of nicely.
Oh yeah, lovely.
That was watercolor and pen and ink, and no computers involved.
Right. And then, we put that in. Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did. I spent a little while drawing Dan Dare for an Eagle comic fanzine. And I became a little bored drawing them after a while, though I did quite enjoy it. It was a very good discipline. But I decided to do the alternative version of Dan as some kind of strange drug dealer.
Yeah. I see. Now, comic books are becoming very much in vogue, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, I wrote a short story called Altitude, and then I thought I could make it into a comic. And this was the opening page of it. This was actually drawn on paper and colored up on Photoshop, because I did it a few years ago. But these days I manipulate it. I'm redoing parts of it, and I'm doing it on Procreate. That's the title page of it.
Okay. And then the last slide we have is presumably one that you do use Procreate.
This is all done on Procreate, and you can see the image is kind of a bit clearer. And this has gone through several iterations. But my daughter Rain is doing has just completed a master's in illustration down in Lisbon. The two drawings above, the black and white woodcut of a woman's face, those two, they're her drawings.
Yes.
And that's my self-portrait put into it. And it's about how my mother, the whole comic she's doing, she's drawing all the rest of it, hundreds of pages, is about her relationship with my mother. And I just did these two silly kind of pages to see what would happen.
Yes.
But I think it worked really well. And it's a really good demonstration of what you can do on Procreate.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, have you, is this something that you're going to likely continue, given the resurgence of interest in comics?
Oh, I always do a little bit of comic work. I have a project at the moment, or it's percolating in the back of my mind, about taking well-known phrases, worldwide phrases, and explaining how they came into being.
Oh, yes.
And one of them that I particularly am interested in at the moment is the Australian expression, "Don't come the raw prawn with me."
Have you solved the riddle?
I know how that came about.
You do?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm going to do a comic about it. Or,
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that. We'll keep that
in mind.
Yeah. Very good. All right, Tim, we'll leave it there. That was fascinating. I mean, my gosh, you've really covered so many areas in art.
I have, yeah, but I'm not sure I've covered them that well in some cases.
Oh, no, you're far too modest. What's the future for you? What sort of areas would you like to do? Or are there any things that you say, I must do that because I've been putting
I would actually like to get back and do a bit of painting again.
Yes.
But I have a kind of idea for something I'd like to paint, a show I'd like to do, which would be called the Seven Deadlies. And it would feature well-known, it would be kind of images of well-known humans, each of which might be a deadly sin. But these 7 images would be big images in the gallery. And when you came in, you would be given a polling card and you would vote as to which one you thought was avarice and which one you thought was sloth, etc.
Yes.
And at the end of it, you would find out.
Yeah.
And the paintings would obviously be for sale.
Fantastic.
And I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, but I might. I did one which I haven't put up, but it's like a maquette for it, if you like.
Okay. Yeah.
Study.
Yeah. I've no doubt you will achieve that.
I might.
You will. Okay. We are going to move on to Q&A, I think, at this stage, all right? And so I'm going to read out some of the comments that have been made first, Tim, and then we'll unmute people and ask them if they'd like to ask you a question in person. So let me, there's loads of them. Right, iPad, I don't know who iPad is, but anyway, you know who you are. Love the political cartoons, Martin Turner, watch out. There you are. Yeah, Trina, my dear wife, says, I quite possibly have that Jackie image in my attic because she's got a whole rake of them.
Oh, she might, yeah.
Hundreds, yeah, hundreds. We must look that up.
Yeah.
Morland says, would also like to know what part Eamon de Butler did. in the film. You thanked him. He was in the credits.
I think he allowed me access to a dubbing machine. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. And I think probably it was Shea Mary Doyle who linked with him, because Shea used to take cans of film off and come back with a cut or a bit of a cut.
I see.
So I think it was kind of saying thank you very much for use of facilities. He wouldn't be there unless he had helped in some way.
Okay. Marianne says, got an idea about the film. Very multi-talented you are, Tim. Great. Met Anne Yates at the graphic studio. A very sturdy person. Well able. Not surprised she liked it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Morris Quillinan says, brilliant. And loads of emojis. Catherine Gagan, really enjoyed the film. What input did... Oh, sorry, the same question. Eamon Butler, yeah. Okay, I think that's answered, Catherine. Eileen McDermott Rose says, wonderful, wonderful work. So very creative in film. Many thanks. You're amazing. Trina Bravo, this old lady loves what you did there. Remember you were saying this, a lot of old ladies didn't. Oh, Trina, you're a lot younger than I am. Absolutely brilliant. Amazed by your talent. Catherine Green, brilliant film of The Prisoner. Catherine Santoro says, completely agree with you about credits and music. Is always one of the last. Yeah, and I absolutely, yeah. I just don't see the point. Catherine Green says, I'm so impressed by the range of your talent. And all right, I think that's it for there. There's one more new one before we go down. Oh, you're preempting me. What's your favorite artwork? So that's the question I always ask. Maybe we'll get that in now. I ask each artist because I'm fascinated by the style they pick. Which is very often nothing to do with their own style, probably a good thing anyway. But anyway, so I'm going to ask you, what of all the artists in the world, what would you like to hang on your sitting room wall if you had the chance?
Well, I knew the late Pat Scott and admired him hugely as a kind of new Renaissance man, if you like. He had such style and such wit. And I think he was very brave. Shea Mary also made a very good film about him called Golden Boy, which is actually excellent.
Really?
I'd never been able to afford one of his pictures. There's one particular one which is just so simple, but so brave to decide that I leave everything out except these couple of things. And I love it.
And it's this?
Yeah, I love that. And it's not like anything I would ever have the courage to do or would conceive of doing. And that's why I like it so much.
And do you know anything about his construct? In other words, is it oil paint? Is there material there?
He put gold leaf.
Yes.
And you can kind of see the squares of the gold leaf in the gold sun.
Yeah.
Direct onto canvas, some of which was it's canvas or it's linen, I'm not sure, some of which was unbleached in any way, and some which I think he may have stained slightly with something like tea, with a very, very light, and masked off the stripes, the reeds or whatever they might be, just a little bit, so that you've got this very subtle image. And he was a very subtle man. Yeah. And I really like that.
Beautiful.
I love the painting. I would love to have that picture.
So where do we have to steal that from? Is it in a museum or private collection?
I don't know where it is. He did a series. It was part of a series of pictures that he did at that time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to unmute people, and if anyone would like to ask a question, let me just.
The one on the Lake Isle of Innisfree, is it available?
It's not really, but if you were to go to Vimeo, are you familiar with Vimeo?
No, but I'll learn.
It's Vimeo.
Yeah.
You can find it there. So, and you can see it in its entirety there. If you go to that, if you Google Vimeo, it'll come up, and then put in The Prisoner by Tim Booth, and probably you'll be able to see it. Or you may have to join Vimeo, but I think you can join it for free. I'm not sure.
Fine. We'll do that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Do you know what we'll do as well? Because when I edit this and put it up on YouTube, there's a description below it, and we could put the link there, Tim.
That would be perfect. Yeah,
we'll do that. We'll do that. Very good. Thanks for that question. Anybody else? Right, it's Tim.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I'm equally gobsmacked. I just can't believe what I've seen. Although I've seen a lot of it before. It's wonderful, wonderful.
To see it all together.
Yeah, incredible.
I'm slightly surprised myself, actually.
Could I ask a question?
Please, Catherine.
It's not a very nice question, Tim. But if you had to make a choice between painting or music, is that a choice you could ever make? It's a tricky question. I'm sorry.
It would be very difficult to make that choice. I think I'm probably better at painting and drawing than I am at music. Because
well, I think his work is wonderful. So
I've done the 10,000 hours drawing, and I haven't really done that in music. And I don't know that I would ever get much better at music. And I think I have been getting better at painting and drawing as my hand became more skilled.
Yeah.
But I think there's a clear limit on my musical abilities. But I love music. Huh. So I just have to listen to music.
Yes, that's it.
And do a bit of painting. But drawing is really what I love the most. I love to draw.
I can see that. I can see that. Just as a brief thing, you probably know of him. His name is Daniel Barenboim. He is a wonderful classical musician.
I do.
And he set up this incredible organization called the East-West Orchestra between Palestine and Israel. But he talked exactly about that 10,000 hours drawing, 10,000 hours of music, before you have the ability to even begin to be the artist, the musician, or whatever. You could find him on. Yeah.
I've maybe done 2,000, I would think, in music, but in drawing, especially because of animation, I've done probably 40,000.
I bet. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Pamela, did you want to say something?
No, I'm grand, thanks.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yeah, Tria says, I think a lot of artists would be delighted to learn about the process of using Procreate. Such inspiration is a gift. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and it's not a very expensive thing, is it, Tim?
Well, what's expensive is the computer that it goes on, which is an iPad Pro. This is quite an old one now. The newer ones are even more multifaceted, and you draw with one of these direct onto the surface. So it's like drawing on paper, more or less. It's slightly more like drawing on glass, but you can put a pad across it as well, which you can buy separately. So the iPad is over €1,000, but the program is not. I bought it for €9.40, which is ridiculously cheap.
Yeah,
but you have to have the iPad. However, the iPad does most of the stuff that an iMac can do. Yes. You could use your iPad as your main computer, especially if they've kind of tooled it up a bit now.
Yeah, so, and is Procreate the sort of the market leader in terms of its ability?
I think it is. It's the best I've come across. I've totally stopped using Photoshop because Photoshop is incredibly cumbersome by comparison.
It is really, yes.
Because with this, you're drawing direct onto it, so you can hold your line, you can hold your hand. You're not sitting with a pad beside and looking at the screen in front of you. You're looking at what you draw. You can take it out. You can sketch out in the garden if you want to. I've done a few like that. So you can use it as a sketchbook. And then you can dump it onto iCloud or whatever if your memory gets if it's not enough memory on it. Or you can buy an iPad which has a huge memory.
Yeah.
It has to be an iPad Pro. The word Pro has to be in it. And you can buy an iPad Pro for about, I think, about 700, which is half the size of the one that I use. And it works very well on that as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think a lot of people, as Trina said, will be looking at that. Dennis says Procreate $10.99 on Apple Store.
Yeah, okay. I bought it about 2 years ago and it was €1 less, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Margot Banks says, brilliant, Tim. See you in Ballinskelligs.
Okay, Margot, thank you.
Yeah, and you heard about Margot's exhibition?
Congratulations, Margot.
Yeah.
I hope the head is clearing.
Fantastic. And it's only just started. It's sold out, I believe, but it's only just started. So if any of you want to see it, it's in the Solomon Gallery in town in Dublin. Well worth a visit. Beautiful, beautiful work. Dennis says, what makes are your guitars?
I have there's a Martin, a Fender, and I have a Tackman.
Okay.
I like the Tackman best of them all at the moment, but that's just because of what I'm playing at the moment.
Yeah, okay, okay. All right, listen, we leave it there. Tim, thank you so much for letting us into your sanctuary there down in Ballinskelligs.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did. And you make it very easy, Alan. I have to compliment you with that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You made my job very easy. But
good.
no, you're a fascinating individual and so talented in so many different areas. It was just a pleasure to hear you. And I'm delighted you agreed to come on the Artist Well for that. So many, many thanks. And I hope to see you in person at some stage.
Absolutely.
Someday. Yeah.
Drop by when you come down this way next time.
I will.
How do we stop this now? What happens?
I have to stop it first. You can leave when you want to leave, but before you do, I just want to make a mention about next week, because next week is our last in this present series. It doesn't mean we're finishing, we're not anything but it, but we are going to take a break in order to do a particular project, which is very exciting, and we'll tell you all about it later, probably the end of August or so. So we will be taking a break for a couple of weeks and then back maybe in September, that time around about that. But next week we've one more to go. And this chap is down in Kerry, I think, fairly near you. And all I'll say is that he works in oil. Now, most of you will say, oh, that's interesting. You mean he doesn't do acrylics? No, he worked in the oil business. He drilled for oil and he went all around the world. And now he gave up drilling for oil and went into oil paints, and has a fantastic following, and recently has held an exhibition. And we're going to be seeing that. We're going to be visiting him in his studio, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's a good one to leave or to go out on, as I say. But anyway, listen, thank you, Tim, so much. Thank you all for watching from all over the world. And we hope you enjoyed today, and looking forward to seeing you next week. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.